I've got some guests coming over for dinner and I want to give them a gift of freshly roasted coffee. So I'm going to roast that here at home and I'm going to pick the coffee out, roast it, and you're going to be able to see the whole process. So stick around. All right, welcome to the Virtual Coffee Lab. So glad that you joined me today. So I'm going to try to do this a little differently. Hopefully it will give the effect that I'm hoping it will, where you're here with me and we're going to roast this coffee together. So I've got some friends coming over. I want to roast them some coffee as a gift, as I'd mentioned in the intro, and I want to make sure I pick out the right coffee. So I've got a lot of different coffees that I have here in my inventory. I'll call it my inventory or my stash. And I want to find one that I know is going to be appealing to them. So let's take a look at my inventory, my stash. All right, beneath my roaster, I have this shelving system here, and I've got some different coffees. So let's take a look and see what I got. I've got different coffees, so some of my son's coffees are right here. We've got some Ethiopian Natural, which is kind of a fruity coffee. And we've got the El Salvador Pacamera that I've been roasting. I've got a couple of videos where I've roasted that. More decaf and some supplies in here. Some of Michael's coffee. And then I have got, let's start with this. I've got the Colombian Gesha. That's kind of fruity for my guests. I'm looking for something a little more chocolatey, kind of more of a, not a darker coffee, but one that's not as fruited. So I'm not going to choose the Brazil dry process. The Sumatra would probably be a good coffee, but that might be a little too funk or hempy. That's the word to use. A little jungle kind of vibe going on with that coffee. I haven't tried the Peru yet. I don't have a lot of that. And I'm not going to do the Kenyan or the Rwandan. So I really have a coffee in mind here, and it's not the Ethiopian dry process either. It's the Guatemalan Huehue. And this is one of my favorite overall everyday coffees that I can roast and share with friends, and I know they'll enjoy it. Because it's not a fruit bomb, and it's not something that is going to be too weird. And so I'm going to grab this coffee here. I've got it organized in these bins. It keeps it dry. And I got a friend who owns a roastery, Sabbath. They have a coffee roasters in Clawson, Michigan. And he packaged some Guatemalan Huehuetenango coffee. So the first thing I want to do is turn on the power. Goes through its initialization. I've got that's ready to go. I've got my fan setting here at neutral setting, which is about 35 on my roaster. I'm going to turn on the emergency shutoff. This is like the backup shutoff valve. And then I'm going to turn on the gas to the roaster, turn on the drum, and so now, and my flame is on. Okay, I'm going to let that go ahead and warm up for about 20 minutes, at least 20 minutes, maybe a little longer. And while I do that, I'm going to go ahead and weigh out the coffee. I've got my scale turned on and set to 0. This pitcher is one of a couple of plastic graduated pitchers that I use to weigh out my coffee and also to charge the roaster. And I'm going to go ahead and pour a pound of Guatemalan Huehue. I got this set to ounces, so I want 16 ounces. And I'll get pretty precise. It's not going to be, well, 16 ounces. There you go. So we got a pound of that weighed out. We'll go ahead and get started here as soon as the roaster's warmed up. In the meantime, I've got to get Artisan turned on my laptop and we'll get going. All right, so I'm just about to start this roast, but I want to put all of this into context. So me being the narrator, I'm going to go through it and share with you what I did, but I roasted this coffee yesterday. So the intro that I recorded for this video and the 2 camera views and Artisan, the roast, I did yesterday. And my guest came over. I gave him the coffee as a gift. And I just want to share with you what he said to me before I begin this roast. Let's see. He said, "Just had the Guatemalan roast you gave me last night. Wow. This is my favorite that you've given us so far. Incredibly smooth and balanced. Thank you." So he liked the coffee. So the roast you're going to see, this coffee was already given to the guest. He drank it and he gave his feedback. And the reason why I'm sharing that with you now, there's 2 reasons. Well, there's 3 reasons. The first reason is because he drank this coffee in less than 24 hours after I roasted it, and he enjoyed it completely. You heard his comments. So some of you think you have to let your coffee rest 2, 4, 7 days. And the reality is you should taste your coffee and give it a try, and then you make up your own decision, because it really varies from coffee to coffee. With this Guatemalan coffee, I can roast it, and then a couple hours later I can begin to drink it, and it's pretty good coffee. Of course, it gets better as time goes on, and I believe its peak is around 3 days for this coffee. So number 1, he enjoyed the coffee, and it hadn't even been 24 hours. Number 2, I make some mistakes on this roast that I thought, man, I've messed this coffee up, but he absolutely loved the coffee. We can be our own worst critics, and so I just want you to know that there'll be some mistakes here in this roast, but these mistakes and the mistakes that you make in your roast, you may think you've destroyed the coffee, and I actually gave this to a guest and he absolutely loved it. And the third thing is, I just want to thank you guys for being here, and if you are not subscribers to my channel, I would really encourage you to subscribe. Just about every week I'm putting out a video, new content. Hopefully it's geared towards the things that you need to know. It's all about home coffee roasting and doing some brewing and just everything related to the whole coffee experience at home. So I would encourage you to subscribe, hit the like button, and the notification bell. And yeah, so let's get to the roast and I'll begin the narration. So I've been preheating the roaster. My charge temp, my target is to be able to charge at 380 degrees. And so I've been heating up the roaster, and I got the roaster all heated up. The temperature came down a little bit, around to 350 degrees. I turned the burners on about 80%, and the roaster is now heating up to the charge temperature. So I'm heating up on the upward to the charge temperature, and my exhaust temperature is going to be probably 75 degrees higher than my drum temperature. So I just wanted to let you know that, and that's what I'm doing here in the very beginning as I get things set up. Okay, I just charged the coffee, went down into the roaster, and my plan is to soak the coffee for about a minute. All right, so I'm monitoring the rate of rise, watching things progress here, and I have turned the gas on. You can see the exhaust temperature go up. And it's going to go up to about 420 degrees. Okay, so here I am watching the rate of rise, and I'm watching to see, once I see turning point show up on the screen, I'm waiting to see my dry time count down and settle in based on my rate of rise, so that I'll know what my time is going to be, my estimated time for dry end. And if you take a look, you'll see it here in Artisan. I'm already down to about 5.5 minutes, and my target is to be about 5 minutes or less on the dry time. So I've increased my gas, and I am marking in Artisan my airflow as well as my drum speed, and I've also marked my gas that I've got going on here. I was a little late doing that, but I wanted to get that taken care of. So I'm looking at the time here, and I see myself doing pretty good. I'm actually at 4 minutes and 45 seconds for my dry end. And so I'm really happy about that. Everything's going according to plan. My range when I'm doing a roast is to have between 4:30 and 5 as my dry end period, my dry phase. So there's not a whole lot of manipulation, changes going on, but as I get closer to dry end, I'm going to be doing a couple things. I'm starting to think about what's happening with my rate of rise, how high it is, and 21 to 25 is usually my range. I bump up my drum speed, and I bump up my airflow a little before dry end. Here I'm smelling the coffee just to make sure. Alright, so we're at 429. Dry end target is now 449, and I am adjusting my drum speed, increasing it. And also my air. I increase my air speed. I'm doing this now to, as you'll see in the rate of rise, I got a little bit of a kick there, and I'm wanting to get that initial bump with the air kind of leveled out. So as I transition, which I just did, I marked dry end. I'm not climbing, but I'm actually starting to set myself up for a descent down towards my target time for first crack. Alright, so right now I'm at about 3.5 minutes for my target time, and 3:45 is a good target time for rate of rise. .345 is a good target time, but it's going to be, my goal is between 3.5 and 3:45 for my target for first crack. And so if you watch that time right now, it's at 2:40. I need to get my rate of rise down, and so I make a gas adjustment, and I move my gas to lower my rate of rise. You can see it dropping there. And there's going to be some ebbs and flows, and that's one of the things that I've always tried to figure out with my roaster. Is it my probe and the way that it's positioned, where I get these kind of these waterfall kind of effects that go on. I have a feeling I've got an issue with my valve because it's very sensitive and it's got a flat spot in it. And so I'm thinking that might be causing some of it as well. So I'm over 3 minutes now for my first crack target, and I want to get down to 3:30 for my time, and so I've got to lower my rate of rise even more yet, and I'm at 14 on my rate of rise right now. I have this little bump that happened there. I made a gas adjustment, and I got a little bit of a hop, so I don't like doing that. I also think that's related to the pre-first crack. I was trying to make a compensation there to avoid the flick and the crash, and I missed that, so I'll call that the flick. And I also have, so that's one mistake that I made right there. And the next is I'm making gas adjustments, and I'm probably, well, I know what's going to happen is I'm going to have a little bit of a crash that takes place as well. And so I'm trying to correct for that with my gas, making my gas adjustments. I've read that having a high rate of rise makes the descent easier, and I think I would agree with that. I have a much more consistent decline going on as the coffee is, as the rate of rise is descending, when I have a higher rate of rise. So 21, I think, was my rate of rise here. My max, I think, got up to about 25 or 26, and then it kind of leveled off, and I went like this for a while. So I don't know. Right now I'm trying to get my rate of rise down. I've already called first crack just now, and I'm trying to get my rate of rise down to about 7 or 8. And I've got this crash that takes place here. I was pretty frustrated and disappointed about that. And I'm trying to add gas. I'm trying to add gas to bring it back, and now I back off the gas, but look at my exhaust temp right there. So you'll see this up angle on the exhaust temp, and it's still climbing. The exhaust temp is still climbing, and so I'm trying to avoid this flick. So I bring the gas back down, and you can see it. It's like the timing of this. It's just there's always a delay, and so you have to anticipate and you have to correct. And so you can see here. I don't know. I mean, I guess that's my error, of course. I've got this little hop in my rate of rise, and it comes back down. So I'm not real excited about that. So I had the pre-flick thing going on just before first crack that I didn't compensate correctly for, and then I had the crash right after first crack. And these are really common things that happen to roasters, to beginner roasters, and even like an intermediate roaster like me. That stuff happens once in a while. Doesn't happen to me all the time. And so here I am. I'm starting to smell the coffee on the trier, because it's like, okay, I know I've made my mistake, but I want to not lose my focus, and I want to smell this coffee and see how it's going. And then I realize it's time. I'm watching my percentage for development, smelling, and then I drop the coffee. So I'm going to look at the roast and the percentages, and I should be good on my percentages. I knew that my roast wasn't a total disaster. I was not happy with the flick and the crash that occurred, and it is what it is. But so let me take a look here. I'll go ahead and we'll take a look at the we'll take a look at the percentages of the roast. And I should be pretty close to my, it's like 50%, 34, 35%, 33%, something like that for that middle phase, and then like 17 or 18% for development. If you look at the temp there, it's 402. For me, I'm usually dropping my coffee around 398 degrees on my roaster, but I went a little darker, a little more for my friend because I knew that he would want something a little more darker, a little more chocolatey, and a little more of a smooth coffee rather than something more bright. And so that's what I did with this roast. And it was not a perfect roast, but again, the end result for my friend was it's the best coffee that I've given him so far. And he's had all kinds of really good coffee. He's had the Ada Batley coffee. He's had an Ethiopian dry coffee that I did, and those were really good roasts, and he enjoyed them, but he really liked this roast. So what I learned from this is, one, I shared my coffee, and I was disappointed, but he liked it. So I would encourage you to do that. Don't be afraid to give your coffee away. We've talked about that here on this channel. It's a great exercise. It gives you an excuse to roast more coffee. I also learned that I've got to get a better grasp of this Guatemalan Huehue coffee on the basically the flick before first crack and the crash after. This wasn't a total disaster on the crash. It didn't like totally crash down, but I did get a bounce. So I think I got down to about 7 on my rate of rise, and then it bounced back up to around 10. Not proud of that, but it's a respectable roast, I guess. And again, my friend enjoyed it. And the other thing I learned is that I need to take a closer look and try to figure out what's going on with my valve. I've actually been trying to hunt down one that has a little more, it takes a little more turning to make the adjustment. This valve that I have right now, I've got just the tiniest movements affect my gas, and so I really want to try to get that addressed as well. Nevertheless, I'm not going to use that as an excuse. So the percentages were good. They were right in line with what I was hoping to do with this for my friend. And all in all, it was a successful roast, and I'll go ahead and take that. So I hope that this way that I presented this was helpful to you guys, and it kind of showed you a little bit more. As I've mentioned before, I cannot just every time have a perfect roast. I, like you, make mistakes at times or have things happen that I try to correct. That's just the nature of coffee roasting, especially for a home roaster, someone like me. But I'm trying to learn from my mistakes. So yeah, leave your comments, share your thoughts. I'd love to hear those. And I hope you guys have a great week roasting. Thanks for joining me today. Have a great day.